Are we live? Or Twitch is being weird again? I think Twitch is being weird again. I suppose we're live. Hello everyone. Everyone? Yeah. Is there anyone? Am I alone? Do we have anyone? So it looks like we're live, so I can see this bitrate thingy. So hello everyone and welcome to yet another Zozin session. How about that? Let's make a little bit of an announcement and officially start the stream. So let me quickly do that. It's a little bit weird, but that's fine. So red circle live on Twitch, right? So this is a live on Twitch. And what are we doing today on Twitch? Today we're trying Jai metaprogramming, right? So this is like the main selling point of the language, and I think the time has come to finally try that specific feature. So we're gonna try it on the we have too many mosquitoes, I'm sorry. So the mosquito season has started, so you have to bear with me fighting with mosquitoes and stuff. So we're gonna try to use it on the breakout game that we started to develop quite recently. So, and I think I have a pretty good opportunity to use a little bit of a metaprogramming there. We'll see how it goes. I'm not sure if it will work out really well, because I'm not 100% sure about the available metaprogramming features in Jai, so, but we're gonna learn along the way. Hello everyone, welcome. How are you guys doing? So let's actually fetch the latest stuff. So you can find the source code of this thing here. Right, I'm gonna copy paste it in the chat or in the description if you're watching on YouTube at some point in the future, because I have no idea when I'm gonna upload this thing, because I have way too many things in the backlog that I need to upload. Some of them are starting to expire, so I have to hurry up to not lose some of the VODs. Right, so some of the VODs that I didn't upload yet, they're already starting to expire. So they're gonna be automatically deleted by Twitch like in a couple of days. So I still need to upload that backlog somehow. And I have to be really careful. I just don't want to dump everything at once, right? Because nobody's gonna watch that. So I have to like slowly upload everything, and also need to cut everything. It's just like it's a pain in the ass, I'm sorry. Okay, so let's take a look at the Jai breaks. So I have a little bit of stuff in here. So, and I don't have a repo in here. So essentially what I need to do, I need to clone it. So let's go ahead and quickly clone it. Okay, so git clone, and there we go. So we're gonna clone everything in here. I still have nightmares about Zig out. Why do you have nightmares? I mean, it was fine. Zig is a fine language. Right, so let's take a look. We have the fresh Jai beta that came out today. So I'm using the new version. So let me quickly do that. And in the new version, we still have this kind of situation. Yeah, so I think removing underscore from tokenization was kind of a bad idea. So probably, I don't know, I'll probably have to do something about that at some point. So compilation, if I try to compile this entire thing, it seems to be compiling. And now, if I try to run it, so this is how the game looks like currently, right? So as you can see, I changed the resolution, I added a little bit of a... excuse me, I'm gonna sneeze. Excuse me. Added a little bit of like coloring and also added the text, so now we have a score, and there we go. So let's actually try to play. So this is how the game looks like right now, which actually looks quite nice, not gonna lie. I really like this rainbowish gradient thingy. So, and if you put a pause, it also says pause in here, so it's pretty cool. Thank you, Apocryphos, for 5 months of tier 1 subscription. Thank you. Oh, and by the way, off screen, I actually fixed the problem with the collision. You remember how that we had a bug that the ball would penetrate into the bar, especially if the bar is very thick. Right, so let's actually quickly check it out. So I made it way more robust than it was. Right, so if I try to demonstrate you that, as you can see, you cannot see that. As you can see, it cannot penetrate that. And this is because if the bar starts to penetrate the ball, it actually backed off, right? So there's some sort of like a prevention mechanism from that to happen. So it's not that noticeable if the bar is not that thick, right? So, but I want you to come up with the general algorithm that works like regardless of the thickness of the bar, so I can easily change this parameter if I want to, and maybe make it part of the gameplay. Maybe there will be some bonuses that actually make the bar thicker for whatever reason, if you want to have that. Right, so, and all of that works more or less nice. Okay. So, and yeah, so what we're gonna use metaprogramming for, as you can see, we have the whole configuration section in here. And unfortunately right now, to change any of the parameters of this configuration section, I have to recompile the entire program. Right. So, and this is not particularly convenient because I want to be able to change some of these parameters at runtime without like restarting the entire game, because maybe I don't want to lose the state of the game. So it would be nice if those things were hot reloaded. But at the same time, it would be also nice to have some sort of like a release mode where hot reloading is going to be removed and all of these constants will be baked into the executable and maybe potentially optimized out and stuff like that. This is something that I used to do in C games quite often, right? So I would have a system where I have a custom configuration format and then some sort of a meta program, a separate program that takes this configuration file and generate different code depending on the build, release or debug build. And for the debug build, it would include hot reloading for the configuration values, and for the release, it will just bake them in. So I decided to try. I don't know how it's gonna go. I decided to try to implement something like that, but for Jai. For Jai, theoretically, you should never create a separate meta program. You can just do that from within the program itself. I'm on 25, yes, I am on 25. So this is the latest one. So the one that just came out today. Oh, by the way, speaking of, I looked into the changelog of today's beta. Let me take a look. So the changelog. And somebody actually added more examples for enumerations. I don't know if that was somebody who watches my streams, because as far as I know, John is not the only person who works on this compiler. Maybe it was one of the developers. But thank you so much. Right, and the examples that were added actually answer my questions about how to work with enumerations. So thank you so much. I don't know if it's because of me or maybe something else, but that was actually very useful. So specifically these things, right, in enumeration basics, and they demonstrate how you can get the enumeration values, all of the enumeration values, all of the enumeration range, like low and high, all of the names, and this is just an example, so thank you so much. Yeah. So, and this is kind of annoying. I suppose I'll have to go and maybe get back that underscore thingy, even though I was so enraged by it. So I think I need to bring it back because this sort of highlighting is so annoying, but I don't really know why it is so dependent on highlighting. So I would expect... yeah, we'll see. So what kind of keywords do we have? So this is Jai keywords. Okay, anyway, so let me restart that. Responsive community, yeah. Alright, so to be able to do what I'm planning to do, we need to understand how metaprogramming works. I looked into how people do metaprogramming in Jai, right? So there's a lot of examples and stuff like that. So, and the usual pattern that I noticed, I already talked about it, is that quite often there is so-called first.jai file, which doesn't contain any main, and it sort of like becomes the build file, right? So, and essentially it's just like a script. And what you're supposed to do in this file, you're supposed to use run directive, right? Set up everything, set up some compilation parameters, and then add a build file into the current compilation, and then it will just build your final executable. You can provide the executable somewhere in here, and there you go. So this is basically the meta program. So, and what's interesting is that you can do all sorts of cool stuff within that meta program, right? Because you sort of like inject yourself into the compilation loop, right? So because there is a function called compiler begin intercept, right? As soon as you sort of intercept the compiler, you can start your own event loop, and you can wait for the compiler events, for the compiler messages. And there's a lot of different messages you can receive, right? So in here we pass the message into the build steps, and in build step we can have message type checked, right? So something got type checked. And if we want to handle something on when something got type checked, we can do that, right? So, and you can like check different things in here. This is actually kind of amazing, right? So essentially you just, if you want to intercept the compilation loop, you can do that, and you can start receiving the messages from the compiler. And as you receive those messages, you can actually generate more code for the compilation. So this is actually kind of amazing, right? It's a very interesting approach to the metaprogramming. I really like it. Compiler callback. No, this is not a callback. That's the thing. This is not a callback. You start an actual event loop and you wait for the compiler messages. An event loop is actually blocking, which means that you are running in a separate thread. Right, so probably this meta program and the actual compiler are in separate threads, and you're sort of waiting for the messages, like, you know, in Go channels, if you want some sort of analogy. Right, and you receive those messages and you just handle them, right? You just handle them. That's actually pretty cool. I don't know how exactly it works. Maybe it's not a separate thread, but because if it's interpreted, it is not necessarily has to be in a separate thread, right? Maybe there is something that sort of like intercepts the bytecode execution or something like that. I don't know. I don't know how exactly it works, but it's actually pretty cool. So let's actually start with something super simple. There is examples for meta programs, right? So maybe a how-to. Basic meta program. Okay, so we have basic meta program. The main program is the target, which says hello sailor, and there is a first.java file which is supposed to compile this entire thing. Right, so here we have a build function which is then executed through run. Right, but you do not necessarily have to do it like that, right? So you can actually do that way simpler. So jailbreak. Let's go to jailbreak and let's create first.jai. So instead of doing something like build this and then run build, what I saw people just do things like that, right? So you can just specify the block and it will just run that block for you. Which is, I think, more convenient if you're making some sort of a build scripts and whatnot. So to use anything related to the compiler, you also have to include the compiler. So we're going to include compiler and basics. Right. So if I understand correctly, so let me actually try to run that specific script. Right, so let me try to run this specific script. It's bin jai, and I'm going to do first jai. So it will complain about the lack of an entry point. Right, so it complains about the lack of the entry point because it doesn't have a main. Right. If I provide the main, it will do nothing. Right, well, we can actually make it do something. Right, we can say something like this, and then we can say hello from the build script. Right, hello from the build script. We can run that, and as you can see, it says hello from the build script, and only then it runs the linker, and then it creates an executable. But it creates the executable for the first program, for the build itself. Right, it's not building our jai.jai, it's building the build script, which is not what we want, right? We want this to act like a script that then builds these things with the parameters we want, right? But it's not what it's doing right now. It's essentially building an empty program with this meta program being run as the first thing. So first thing we want to do, we want to tell the compiler, okay, don't generate any executable, right? Because we don't want to build this file, we want to build this file. And the way you say that, right, so basic meta program. In the meta program itself, you basically set build options DC, and DC stands for during compilation, right? So set build options during DC. We can actually take a look at where it's defined. So I think it's somewhere in the modules, maybe it's somewhere in the compiler, right? Yeah, there we go. So as you can see, DC stands for during compilation time, and there is like a whole structure, build options during compile. And there's not that many options in there. So the most important option here is do output. If true, make no change to build. If true, if false, essentially it doesn't produce any executable, right? Or maybe library or anything like that. So there's a lot of other parameters in here that we don't care about. But essentially we only need to set this thing, right? So let's go to first here, and I'm gonna just put this thing in here. And as soon as I do that, the meta program won't care about entry point. So I should be able to do something like this. And notice how it didn't even run the linker. It didn't even run the linker because we set to the current compilation process, do not do any output, right? So we set the build options for the current running process. Right, so the compilation starts from here, and then we set the option during the compilation. So as soon as the compilation finished, it looked okay, don't do any output, and it's not going to do any output, and this entire thing acts like a script now. Right, so we still have this executable, but now if I try to run it, it just says hello from the build script, and it doesn't produce anything. So now this entire thing acts like a script essentially. Right, we disable the output of the executable during the compilation, and now this is an interpreted script, kind of. So I wonder if we can go even further and just add a shebang in here, right? So something like home streamer opt jai bin jai linux, right? So you can probably do something like that, and then you can add an executable permissions in here, something like this. And now if I try to do first jai, it's literally a script, which doesn't even produce any executable, so, right, which is kind of funny, right? So it's kind of like a very bureaucratic way of defining a script, because you don't necessarily have to have a compiler, you can just have a basics, then you have to use run, and you have to say that you don't want to output, and only then you'll have some sort of script. I really like how this language sort of makes the, you know, the border between executable, like interpreted, and compilable, like very blurry, because like actually like compile time and runtime are superficial demarcation, if you even know what I mean. So okay, you do that, but then what can you do in this build script? Let's take a look at the basic metaprogramming, right? The first thing you have to do, you have to create a secondary workspace. I do not necessarily know what is a secondary workspace, but I suppose you start like a second compilation process to compile the other program. Remember that we start this thing to actually compile a different thing, right? I think this is how it works. Were you told that the num how-to has been updated to now show how to get the number of the... Was it updated because of me? I noticed that in the changelog. As soon as the new beta came out, first thing I did, I looked into the changelog, and in changelog I saw that somebody extended the enumeration. I saw that from the changelog. Was it because of me? I really appreciate it. Whoever added more examples to the enumerations, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. So I saw that. We mentioned it in a stream, and he went and did that. Okay, thank you so much. It's actually pretty cool, because now I learned that there is a whole set of functions for enumerations, and I found those functions in the module, and now I kind of know what you can do with enumerations. Thank you so much. This is actually super cool. Rafael Lubo, thank you so much. Right, that's pretty cool. Alrighty. So yeah, we have to start like a second compilation process. At least this is how I understand that, right? So we have to create a workspace. I still don't really know what is a workspace, but you can create it. But you have to create it, kind of. Okay, so here we can say maybe jai break. I don't really know what name for a workspace means. Is it even useful for anything? Maybe it is useful. And it can also fail, right? So if it fails, we're gonna do something like this. Okay. After we created a workspace, we need to set some build options for that workspace. Right, there is a lot of build options. Build options is actually a huge structure, right? So let's take a look at that structure. So compiler, I saw the compiler, but I couldn't get there. So here is build options during compile time. We'll already look into that, but there is just build options, and here it is, build options. Right, so these are all of the build options that you can set, and this is not it, because some of the build options like hidden into nested structures, so there's separately LLVM options, right? So an LLVM options is more things in here, right? As you can see, it's a huge thing, but you know what's cool about that? This is what you use instead of the flags in the compiler, right? So if you take a look at the flags, right? So if you just run something like jai-help, they even talk about that. So there is a bunch of flags in here, not that many, right? And then they say, and that's all. Unlike most contemporary compilers, we don't have a huge number of arcane arguments to control all kinds of minute things that you have to spend a long time learning about. Our philosophy is, it's much more effective to do configuration from code, where you have a great deal of precise control over what's happening. Options can be expressed as easy to understand data structures and so forth. To get started, look into the build options in the module compiler build.jai, or look at the how-to program that is written yet, but will that is not written yet, but will be eventually. I think it's already written, so some of that is probably outdated, but yeah, this is what we're looking to that. So the philosophy of this language is like you have to configure through the structure. Right, so and this structure is located in the workspace, so you have to do get build options, right? So you get this structure and you get actually a copy of the structure, if I understand correctly. What's interesting, you can actually put -1 in here, which probably maybe indicates the current workspace, right? But anyway, so and then you can modify the structure and then you have to put it back into the workspace, right? So you get a copy of this structure because you get everything, the whole state, because the structure is very big. You modify some of the fields and you put it back into the workspace. That's how we do that, if I understand correctly. Hey Tsojing, this is me, John Blow. We did not change the documentation because of you. It was always in our plans to document that part of the immersion function. This was a simple case of post hoc ergo propter hoc. I don't know what it is, but thank you, John Blow himself. So it's not him actually, it's yet another memer in the chat. So is that the same person saying these memes all the time, or is that different people? I'm pretty sure it's the same person. John has so many Twitch aliases, yeah, it's amazing. Okay. Okay, it's the same person. Some people don't know, but they can actually look into the logs, and now I know it's the only person. It's a one-man spam. Okay, but it's funny one. It's funny one. All right, so let me see. So this is what we need to do in here. So we take target options and go in jailbreak. I suppose we can even print them, can we? We can even take a look at them. So we got some options, right? And let's just like print target options and see how it goes, right? So we can just run that. And we have undeclared identifier, and this is because we have to include the compiler, right? We have to include the compiler. And there we go. So here are all of the options, right? So there's some machine options. I have no idea what that is, but it's a huge array of numbers. And yep, that's a huge structure. Okay, and what we can do in that specific structure. So the first thing we have to do, we have to specify the output executable, right? So target options, output executable, and let's call it jailbreak, right? I don't want to really call it anything else. And in here, they just set build options back. Okay, do we want to configure anything else? I didn't think so, right? So let's actually set it back. Set build options, target options, and we set it back. There we go. So after that, what we have to do, we have to add a build file, right? So add build file into the workspace, and a build file is going to be jailbreak. And there you go. So we added the build file, and as far as I know, this is basically it. If you don't want to intercept any compiler messages, this is basically it, right? So you have to create a workspace, you have to set some options that you want. You can find options in the compiler itself. There's a lot of them. So there's an interesting options in LLVM, right? That I really want to look into, but don't really have enough knowledge and time right now. So I really like this one. Output LLVM intermediate representation before optimization. That's a very interesting one. So you can instruct the compiler to actually output the intermediate representation of the program. And you can do all sorts of interesting things with that intermediate representation. For instance, translate it to a different bytecode. For instance, WebAssembly bytecode. Which means through a set of hacks, we can compile Java program to WebAssembly, but I have no idea how difficult would that be, because the Java program has like a little bit of a runtime that it expects, so it might not work easily. This is something that I really want to look into at some point. It will be kind of cool to be able to compile Java to WebAssembly, right? So, because maybe I want to like have that game like, you know, running in the browser. How you made your hair curly? It's actually curled naturally. Like, I don't know. It's kind of funny. There's something biological happening with me. I don't know, maybe I'm getting older. But when I was younger, my hair was actually straight. And the older I get, the more curly it becomes. It's really weird. I don't know what the fuck is going on. Anyway. Feels old. I'm getting old. Getting tired. Alright, so that should be enough. Right, that should be enough. And now, if I try to build this entire thing, it didn't say anything, but it's supposed to generate jailbreak. So let's actually remove the jailbreak, and boom, it didn't create a jailbreak, which is rather strange. Why it didn't do anything? Did it create it in a build? Did it create it in a build? Huh. It didn't even run the thing. Set build options, add build file. I must have forgotten something. Did I forget anything? So let me try to run it like a properly. So it's going to be opt jai bin jai first jai, and it still didn't create the output. Output executable. Okay, so let's see. So we created a workspace. We set options, we get options, we set the executable, and set build options back. So intercept, we don't have to really do that. Compile intercept, and then we don't output anything in the current thing that we build the run. But then that should be it. Time to get old faster. Yeah. This is sus. Is that because I set build options at the beginning and not at the end? You set output to false, but I set it for during compilation. Right. And I wonder if it's something that I have to put at the end. Okay, I can try to do it like that. Ooh. So okay, so we learned something. So basically I thought it will set it for the current workspace, whatever hell that is. So it's either the build options are inherited. Yeah, it feels like when you create a workspace, the build options are sort of inherited from the current build options. Is that true? That's actually very interesting. Alright. So that means I'll have to put it in here. So then it will create an exception, and only then. Okay, or maybe, yeah, so the build options and build options during compilation are two different structures. Maybe build options during compilations are used globally for any builds, for any workspaces. And that's why you have to first build, and then right before the end of the program you have to set output so it doesn't output the current file. Ooh, that's a pretty cool thing. So what's your opinion on Kotlin? I don't know. I have the same opinion on any language on JVM. Right, so as soon as you make a language on JVM, that's it. You're basically in your own walled garden that is very difficult to get out, and no matter how good your language is. So yeah, it's a language for a very specific ecosystem that is difficult to integrate with other ecosystems. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like the language itself doesn't matter. You're making it a part of a very specific ecosystem, and that's it. You're locked in there. So it's not even about the language. It's about, like, you know, the infrastructure. When people get older, the hair on other head often gets thinner. Like each hair is smaller, which can change the texture with a surprising way. Okay, so that actually makes sense. That explains it. Maybe that's the reason. All right. Okay. And also, as far as I know, Kotlin is implemented in JVM, right? So, yeah. Anything on JVM is a huge pain in the ass. Okay. So we created an executable, which is super nice. All right. You know what's interesting? You can add any code during the compilation of the current program. So you, as you can see, you add a build file, right? You add a build file here. Let's try to find the build file in the compiler, right? So on top of add build file, you can add build string. You can add build string. If provided code is damaged, okay, so there's something for the scope. So now let's actually take a look at something interesting. So if I go into jailbreak, right? If I go into the jailbreak and let's try to print something that is foo, right? So I never defined foo anywhere, and if I try to compile this entire thing, it will say undeclared identifier foo. Now, if you go to the build script and right before adding this file, you add build string, and let's actually add foo 69. This thing will compile. Look, so how useful could it be? Well, you can actually add multiple of them. Who said you can't add multiple of them? Like so. And you will have 10 constants. Actually, 11 constants. Right. So that means you can have some sort of Turing-complete logic that generates these definitions. Isn't that cool? It's actually very dumb, but yet genius way to do metaprogramming. Furthermore, since you can intercept the compiler messages, you can generate those things conditionally. So essentially you can loop and you can wait for a specific message. For example, a variable was type checked. You may look into the variable name and based on its variable name generate function. So for each variable, like constant variable that starts with a foo, you generate a special function that does something for that specific variable. It is easy to do that because you can just add additional code right during the compilation like that. Isn't that fucking cool? This is dank. This is the dankest way of doing this kind of stuff. Like, I've never seen that before. It's like, this is exactly how I would do that in C. Right, so in C, I would definitely write a separate meta program that generates text. Right. But here, it's almost the same, but it's just generated, like integrated together. The program that generates more code and the program that compiles the final program is the same thing. They're integrated together and they can actually exchange information with each other. So, you know what's funny? I tried to actually introduce some compilation errors, right? So you can actually do something like this, right? You can actually do something like this. And it's not it. We have to probably just do something like this. There we go. So it's going to compile and it's going to work. If you, like, do some compilation error, so there's no semicolon, it will complain. We parse the declaration, so we expected a semicolon after it, and as you can see, it actually puts your string into a separate file. And I wonder, will it create like a file for each individual string? I think it will. Right, I think it will. And because of that, you are, I'm pretty sure you are encouraged to actually do add build file. Because you can actually basically generate all of that and put all of that into a separate file and add build file. And it's the same add build file as you use for just adding the main thing. So it's just like you're using the same mechanism for building the thing and for generating the thing and then adding it to the final program. And it's just like the one single thing. You're using a single language to do all of that. Okay. So this is genius. I really like that. It's dumb, but because it's so dumb, it's genius, right? Because it's essentially the same thing that people already did in C and C++. People were already doing exact same thing. It's just there was no way to communicate between the code generation and the main compilation process. Right, there was just no way for them to collaborate how, and you always used like a shell script to transmit information from one process from one phase to another phase. Now it's the same thing and they can easily like inter-cooperate. Right, so the compiler can actually give the generator information of what definitions has already compiled, and then the generator can give more code, which in turn can give more events, and so on and so forth. Right, so it just creates a very interesting feedback loop between the code generation and the compilation process. Right, it becomes like one thing. All right, so let me see. So here, so we essentially created like a simple build, right? So we created a simple build, and now to build the program, we have to do first Jai. Of course, like I probably have to get rid of that. And there you go. So, and it compiled everything. So I suppose the first commit of today is going to be like introducing build first.jai, which is the build thingy. Furthermore, I think the time has come to update some stuff in here. So what we have to do is just Jai first. And also I'm using a fresher beta. So let me just check what version do I use. So the version is 25, not 24. Right. So it works. It is intended to work with the beta 25. Like I want to specifically like state on which beta it works, because you may have a different beta, so you know which one to use, right? Because maybe in the future it's going to change so much that it's not going to compile. So UC10, thank you so much for your tier 1 subscription, and I hope I didn't miss anything. Oppo thank you. Everyone who subscribed, I really appreciate that, thank you. Okay, so I still learn metaprogramming in Jai, so I may not know all of the things, right? Okay, introduced first Jai build program, right? So this is a build program. I'm going to push that right into the repo. You can find this thing in the description, right? In the description, and let me see. Like for anyone who's watching live or who's watching on YouTube, you can find that in here as well. Dev Lotus, thank you so much for Twitch Prime. Thank you. So maybe there is more robust way to actually add additional code. So for some reason I thought that maybe you should be constructing the AST and then adding those AST to the program, but you can actually add them as a text. So if you want to add as a text like more complicated stuff, you can use the hash string syntax. Right? You can always just do something like function, and hash string syntax is actually kind of similar to like Perl string syntax. There's like a multi-line Perl things. You provide string, then you provide end, and that is the token that indicates the end of the string. So that means here you can have like a multi-line string that defines something, right? For instance, foo, and you can just write some code in here, right? So in here you can do 0, 10, and then you can print this thing like so if you want to, right? So this is in an entire function, and then you can just add build string function like this, right? So if you want to have like a whole block, you can actually do it like that. So which is kind of cool. So we can try to do that. Right, and in the build, what kind of strings do we have? So edit string w3, yeah, there we go. So it's a string that came from the workspace, right? So there's this kind of syntax for like big strings, which is super convenient for example, shaders, right? So if you want to have a baked shader into the source code, you can just write this shader in here, which is super convenient. As far as I know, it is used in the standard library. I don't want to call it standard library, but in the simp specifically, right? Simp has a bunch of like built-in shaders, and they're defined in these kind of strings, right? But this is not what we're gonna do right now. Okay. So what essentially I want to do, as I already said, I have a huge config section, right? So I want to move these configuration parameters into a separate file with its own syntax. You know what I mean? Right, and essentially what I want to do, I want to parse that file at compile time, and depending on the mode, I want to either bake those values into the executable or generate some code that allows you to hot reload these values, right? So that's essentially what we're going to try to do. So let's go ahead and create the config. So it's going to be config, how should I call it? I don't know. So params config. So in here we're going to have FPS, right? So FPS is going to be 60, and I'm just thinking how we're going to be determining the types of those things. So maybe I'm going to use a similar syntax like FPS. You have to provide the type in here, and then equals, and then the value, right? And this single line is basically a single configuration thingy. Right, so yeah, we need to parse it somehow. So other things that we'll need, I don't know, things like proc size, right? Things like proc size. This one is float, and this is actually evaluated thing, which is rather interesting, right? Because like, who said I can't really take this as an expression? Well, I can't really easily evaluate that expression, or can I? Is there any way in Jai to take a string, compile it at runtime, and then, well, I mean, I should be able to. I mean, is there any way to use the compiler at runtime? That's a very interesting question. Compiler at runtime. You guys thought about that? Because I don't want to like write, try it. But how would you do that? How would you even start the process? Like, I mean, I can create a workspace at runtime, right? I can create a workspace at runtime, but does that mean that I'm running the thing? The compiler will be part of the resulting binary file, apparently, which kind of would like if I distribute that file, would that violate the agreement on beta, right? Because, well, I mean, it's not maybe not. I don't know. Okay, let me try. Let me just see if it's gonna work or not. Technically, the compiler uses the compiler at runtime. So test J, right? And essentially, what I should be able to do is compiler, right? So main, and then I'm gonna just like print something like hello sailor. That would be interesting if it works, but I have a feeling that it's not gonna work. I have a feeling that it's not gonna. And declared print, and of course I have to do build. Not build basic, choose Christ. I'm being an idiot. Okay, so it compiles, so I can include compiler, and now I have a runtime. But then, can I create a workspace? Create workspace. Oh, it may fail at runtime, saying that I couldn't create the workspace. It may do that, and that's why it may fail, and that's why we check that. Furthermore, I can try to print the workspace. Right, compiler create a workspace. Okay, let's see. It compiled, but now if I try to run this thing, okay, attempt to call compile time procedure at runtime. Okay, you can't do that. Compile time procedure at runtime, and this is because that specific procedure, right, if we take a look at opt-gi module compiler is marked as compiler, right? So there is a special marker in here, right? And I suppose you can't call any of these functions in runtime. I have a feeling that you just can't call them at runtime. Though it still compiles. Isn't that interesting? I think it's kind of interesting, right? So you just can't do that. It's a compile time only functions. Compile time only functions. Okay. So my problem is that something that I had with the current way of configuration, right? With the current way of configuration is that I had parameters that depend on each other, right? So we can say bar y is like that minus 50, right? So which is kind of convenient, but maybe some of these parameters should be runtime parameters always, right? So target grid x, right? Since it's not an independent parameter, right? Since it's not an independent parameter, maybe it should never be like that, right? Maybe in the configuration we should keep independent parameters, the parameters that don't depend on other ones, right? Everything else, everything that depends on other things have to be like a runtime thing anyway. Okay, so conf params conf, this is f32, but this kind of stuff is not really convenient anymore, so I have to make it like 20 now. So this is 20, and this one has to be something like this. Maybe I can even align it like that. Right, so this is the configuration file, right? The thing I want to do is read this entire configuration file into the memory at compile time. How can we do that? If I remember correctly, in J there is some function to read an entire file. So opt J module. I think it was something read entire file. I think it was literally called like that. Yeah, there is such thing apparently, which is nice. And let's find the definition of that thing. Okay, so, and there is implementation for, you know, different platforms, Unix and Windows. Zero terminated. There is even a parameter that tells you whether you want a zero terminated thing or not. It's pretty cool. So, and it can also tell you whether it failed or not. So that's convenient. Okay, so let's actually go into the into here, and then we're gonna say params config, right? So it's params config. I don't think I care about zero terminated, and in here I probably expect the params content and whether it's succeeded or not, right? If not okay, we'll have to throw an error. Could not read, maybe I'm gonna actually say something like error, could not read. So probably have to extract it, params file path, right? So this is params file path. Let's actually put it in here, params file path, boom, params file path, and then exit, maybe just return, right? So, and for the consistency, I'm gonna put it in here, right? So there we go. Cool. Now I can also go ahead and print it, like so. Print like this, and params content. So there we go. We have a params content. If I try to compile the game now, so first J, undeclared identifier read entire file, and this is because read entire file is located in file. Okay. So we have to include file. There we go. As you can see, we read the content of the params.conf at compile time. So the only thing that is left is to parse this thing. I wonder if there is a way to like split by lines somehow. So we have file. Maybe there is something called string. There is something called string. There's something like split. Okay, split from, okay, so there's a lot of things in here, but okay, split right, split left. Why all of that is commented out? Split from left. Okay, that's very cool. So you provide the bytes, so it works on the level of a bytes. No Unicode so far. So split from left. I want to see what the hell is that. I suppose it just chops a single value from there. I have a feeling that's what's happening. So we need to test it out. So let's actually quickly test it out. All right. So in here, I might as well actually return in here, right, to block everything. So let's introduce the following thing. Hello world foo, and the byte is going to be space. So what we're supposed to have in here, right, what we're supposed to have in here is found left right, that's what we have in here. And if we found, I want to print left and right. Print not found. Might as well. Okay. So return statement. Okay, so this is a warning. We don't care about that. So here is the string. So this is the string now. And what do we have? Okay, so statement. This is all right. Okay, so this is what we got. So we had hello world foo, and we split by a space, and what we've got, hello world foo. So essentially it just like chops it one time, right? It just chops it one time. Another thing, so let me actually wrap it with bars so we can see what characters are like left. Okay, so it also removes the separator. So there was a space separator and there is no such space separator. It basically chops by a delimiter. which is nice, right? Which is absolutely nice. Which means that now I should be able to chop the content of that file line by line, right? So maybe it would make sense to actually copy paste it here. So this is where we're gonna start, you know, parsing, the parsing process. Okay. So we can do something like, let me actually think. Line rest, and I wonder if I can reassign that. So maybe I'm gonna have something like content, because I presume read entire file allocates some memory that we're supposed to free at some point. So it would be nice to actually preserve params content and just do something like maybe rest params content. And what we're gonna do in here is that while rest is not empty, I think maybe there is something like length, right? 0, greater than 0. And in here, what we're going to have, we're going to do that. Rest, found line, character. It's gonna be new line, and then let's print the line, right? Let's print the line. This is the new stuff, and that should be it. As far as I know, there is already a hot loader module with a config parser. Okay, the stream is over. Thank you everyone who's watching me right now. I really appreciate that. We're done with doing this entire thing. Bye-bye. All right, so I guess that's what you want, right? So, so let me see. I think I want to make a small break because I probably want to make a cup of tea because I'm falling asleep. I'm falling asleep. Short stream, yeah. So for how long will we stream? We're already streaming for like 1 hour, so that should be fine. That should be fine. That should be fine. You're scared. Don't be scared. Also, there is already game written in Jai. There is no need to implement a game. Like, why are you implementing a game? All right. So, okay, let's make a small break. Anyway, so hit the bell, subscribe. So let me see what's going on. Where do we have like a definition of the string somewhere? Let me see. So string, maybe in module in here. So string, or maybe in the basics, or maybe we can try to search for string like so, which kind of worked. Oh shit, there's a lot of things like that because they end with a string. So maybe we are searching for something like struct. Maybe no, maybe it's something like very much internal. So also let's take a look at the how strings. So what we can do with a string. Many programs want to text string. So okay, so it's a count. All right, count and data, which is nice, I think. So let's go in here. So this one is count. While this thing is count split from left, and that should create something. So let's actually try to compile this thing and see. Couldn't find because we're in the wrong place. Oh yeah, look at that. So it never actually advanced anywhere. So maybe we can have something like rest 0, and then we can say rest equal rest 0, right? So can we do something like that? And it kind of worked, right? So because we've got these separate lines, isn't that cool? So probably want to remove this thing, so we can already sort of separate things by line. Okay, go. Now we need to go a little bit deeper. We need to go a little bit deeper and separate the line itself, right? So let's do split from left, right? So in this one is going to be line. So, and this one is going to be what? We want to separate this thing like so. That way, so can I just say that I don't care about found? Can I do something like that? I think I should be able to do that. Maybe not. And then, or maybe I should actually take this kind of stuff, because then I can easily check, right? So this is the name. I have a feeling it would be better to have a separate function that accepts the line and returns you a structure for the configuration parameter. And like, I have to keep reminding myself that we're doing all of that at compile time, right? At compile time, I organize the loop and then think, okay, it would be nice to have a structure, and I don't have to program in a separate weird language that has nothing to do with the language that I'm currently developing the entire thing in. It's just that it's the same language, right? I'm just using the same language. Valigo, thank you so much for 30 months of tier 1 subscription. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Poggy Woggy indeed, how are you doing? How are your speedruns? Did you already get first place in the world? Alrighty, so what I want to have is still an advantage of the Lisp macros, yeah. So param, let's call this param. So this is going to be a structure, and we're going to have a name, right, which is a string. Then we may have a type, which is not necessarily a type. We can call it param type. I got world record like 4 months ago, yeah, but unfortunately I had to abandon my battle station to flee from country because my customers can't pay me anymore. Oh, okay, so I hope everything's fine now. So you're already in a different country, right? It's great. Okay, so, and we want to have some sort of a value. And so we're now doing all the boring immigration paper stuff. Okay, good luck with that. Good luck. Okay, so here we would like to have something like a union. Do we have a unions though? We probably don't have unions. Okay, hanging there. Yeah, it's fine for me. I'm doing fine. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for 6 months of Twitch Prime, Gen 18383. Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, so this one is interesting. How do we like have this polymorphism on the level of data? Let's actually learn about that a little bit. Let's actually learn about that, how to union. Okay, so there's no mentioning of union in the names, but if we take a look at this thing, so there's no mention of union in here as well. Okay, so maybe there's something in the modules. I want to at least see some conversations about, okay, so there's a tagged union. Okay, how to make a simple tagged union support, which is something that people request sometimes. This language like C has built-in union time designed, designated by the keyword. Really? There's no... Wait, don't tell me... Okay, so tagged union... okay, very interesting. But if it has a... Wait a second, is this outdated? Because there's no union keyword, is it? So it feels like it is outdated. Let me close the chat. So we got a lot of backseries in there. Okay. So probably want to go into maybe like an actual examples, right? So I need to go to the actual examples. Does anyone use union in actual examples? Okay, so there's no such thing. So there's only like a tagged union, but I'm not even sure if I need a tagged union. Maybe I can approach this thing slightly differently. Right. But when using the union, you have to know which type is stored inside it so that you know how to interpret the memory stored in here. This is done using some kind of enum-based type tag, but in C-like languages, maybe it's a hassle to define all these types tags and remember what tags are called, so on and so forth. So here we define a tag union that takes care of tags automatically. Okay, this is actually very interesting. So tagged union, and you can provide a bunch of types. Okay, so, and you can set, and I suppose set will actually, how to call that, dispatch at compile time depending on the type you're setting. It will set the tag to float, which is the value. Okay, that's pretty cool. Because this language is not really about overloading weird operators, and it is definitely not about overloading the equals. We do not attempt to do these things here. We do not want to pretend tag union is a primitive type. Okay, that's cool. We haven't yet done some kind of a macro switching on the type. I expect this is to be an interesting test of the macro system that will motivate a bit of improvement. 2021. Year ago. Okay, that's cool. So you have a tag parameter, and this is basically the types. Tag tells us the type is for the... Okay, well, we can kind of dispatch based on this specific type. All right. So I really like this thing. I really like this thing. So value type, and so you have a tagged union and value, and then value. So you then cast the data, and it feels like this thing does not check if you're trying to set a value that is present in the tagged union or not. Like, it doesn't care. Like you set this value, it will just set it there. And in here, what it does, it gets the biggest. I really like how straightforward it is, actually. Right, so what you do, you pass a list of types, right? This is a list of types. Then, given the list of types, you calculate the biggest size, and you just allocate enough bytes for that specific size. This is like literally what C does, but expressed explicitly using the language. That is kind of cool. I really like that. This is so cool. The fuck. The only thing, I didn't see that it checks that the value is present within the tagged union type list, except there is a debug thing in here, and I guess this is what we check in here, right? So debug now check that T is one of the type. Okay, so it would be kind of cool if it was always at compile time, but why is it only when debug is enabled? Right, so... okay, so that's fine. So you can also check, does the tagged union hold the type of T, which could be used. Okay, so that's so this is internal thing. I really like that. So, and how this thing is implemented, so we have a for loop which iterates through the types and gets them. Okay, this is so simple. What the fuck? Why this is so offensively simple and straightforward. This language is offensive. Really, it's too fucking based. What the fuck? Yeah. It's like, yeah, we need some sort of like a mathematical elegant system that fits our problem elegantly in. No, bitch, you want to do that? Just fucking do that, right? Just explain it directly in imperative way. You want to do that, and that, it should work, right? It's just like, it's so offensively based and cool, and it's just like, what the fuck? Love it. Sorry. The fuck. Anyway. Anyways. So because of that, we don't really need type tag because it's gonna be already available in the tagged union. I don't know, maybe this mechanism is old and you're not supposed to use this, but I kind of like it, right? So the tagged union. But still, it's kind of strange, right? So if I take a look at the mode union, union is not part of the mode keyword lists, and I suppose mode is kind of outdated, right? So, but then they say that there is union support, but there's no examples in there, so maybe it's not documented yet. So I wonder if I just grep rn, I should probably grep in the entire compiler. All right, so let's actually grep in the entire compiler. Do we have something like that, like in the entire? Okay, there is such thing, so I suppose the mode is outdated. Alright. And since, like, it's not documented well, which probably means that maybe it works exactly like in C. Okay, that's just a little bit weird. Right, so it's not documented properly yet. So let me go to local, and here I'm gonna go to J, keywords, struct, union. Okay. So first, and if I try to do something like union, okay, it works. So I probably need to maybe create a pull request for the. Though my previous pull request was not still, you know, taken into account, unfortunately. Joy Emacs. Let me take a look. Trying to launch Emacs from Python. It do be like that sometimes. Google, by the way, is broken. KGB is just like checking what I'm searching for, right? So they are just seeing that I'm not searching for anything dangerous for the government, right? And then they approve each individual query to Google manually, right? So that's why it takes so much time, right? So the KGB officer actually saw that they don't even know what is Jai Emacs. They searched, it has nothing to do with overthrowing the government, so they decided to let it in. That's why it then eventually worked. So anyway, pull request. So this is my pull request, and what I did here is just like edit regular expression thingy. Yeah. Oh, okay. Farkan, thank you so much for approving. Can we get more approves for this pull request, please? Right, so we need to get it in. So essentially what I did here is just like edit the regular expression to parse the compilation error so we can jump quickly there. Right, so we don't have enough approves. It was week ago. Okay. Anyway, so I suppose the author just doesn't have enough time to work on this thing, so which is completely understandable. Okay, opt J modules tagged union, tagged union. All right. So maybe I'm gonna import tagged union, and here we can have value tagged union. Sorry, just a reflex. You didn't see that. You definitely didn't see that. S64 or float 32. So we're gonna work with these two values, right? I'm gonna just put it like this. So that way I don't even yet need to have my own flag. I can just like do it myself. Is Jai still in closed beta? Yes, it is, but it's slowly expanding. So I expect more and more people are gonna be streaming Jai soon. And also trying Jai and stuff like that. It's actually getting there, right? It's pretty stable. I haven't encountered any bugs so far, but I haven't tried anything super sophisticated. Me searching for Stalin themed furry porn. So I think the KGB would allow that because it's not dangerous for the government information. You can't use that information to overthrow the government, so it's totally fine, right? So it's just like... Anyway, I'm sorry. Well, everything I say, by the way, has no intent to offend anyone. It's just a joke, it's just a parody, okay? Anyways. Let's continue. Now, what I want to say, I want to be able to parse param, right? So here I accept the line and I return a parameter, right? Or maybe I can also return an indication of a failure or success, right? So we usually do that through a boolean in here, right? So did it succeed or did it fail? It's supposed to be a boolean. Okay. Hello, Tsoding. This is Agent Alexander T. Redacted. I'm reaching out in relation to a recent search that you made online. We couldn't translate the J Emacs to any of our known language, so can you please explain what this search was about? It will help our agent in the future not to spend too much time on related searches. Thanks a lot for understanding. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the comment. I really appreciate it. So, let's continue. So here, what we need to do. So this is the rest 0, and I just reassign the rest to here. And so I'm just like really curious. I think found or not found has like, it doesn't matter, right? And it would be nice to be able to just underscore this, and we'll see. Now, parse param. I provide the line. And then I get either OK, param, right? If not OK, we can say could not parse param, right? Error could not parse param, though it would be also kind of nice to explain where exactly we failed to parse the parameter, if you know what I mean, right? So we can say that it happened in this file. We know the file, right? So there is a params file path, so this is where exactly it failed. But it would be also nice to say where, like, on which line. On which line it happened as well. But the line is something that we can only keep track of, right? So this is going to be the line, and there here at the end, we're going to do something like this, right? So as you can see, we keep track of the line, and there you go. And here I can also return from the entire thing. Okay. So after that, I'm going to just print the parameter. Hopefully it will say something interesting. Okay. opt j bin j first j. There we go. So line, not all control paths, so let's return nothing, false. Nothing, false. And undeclared identifier not. What? Am I going fucking crazy? Because I literally have this thing in here and it works. Maybe there is a little bit of an overshadowing. Oh, by the way, apparently the... Oh, okay. Nice error message. Okay, I see. The type, since I fucked up the order, the type of OK was a parameter. And since there is no overloading for exclamation mark, it couldn't find a corresponding overloading. So, okay, this is a good case of bad error message. Right, what it should have said instead, it should have said, right, expected type boolean, but got type parameter, and then I would realize, oh, okay, I just fucked up the order of the arguments, and the only thing I have to do is just swap them around. and it will work. I mean, it will still have some problems in here, but I mean, this particular part will compile. So I think this is a straight up bug of the compiler, right? So it actually hurts the usability of the compiler. Maybe I should report that. Where did it parse it as identifier? It's an identifier. You can import error messages to John. I'll probably do that, right? So, but I need to come up with a more concise example for this specific case. Because I personally strongly believe that the compiler has to sort of like give you as much information as possible to resolve the problem, and sometimes even try to understand your intent and suggest examples, right? It should be a dialogue between the programmer and the compiler. Okay, so if I remember, like I probably need to, yeah, create some sort of report and stuff like that. We'll see. Okay. So rest, so complaints type mismatch, type string, but got, okay. Oh, line, okay. What's called line number? Line number, line number. Okay, so it couldn't parse. Oh, okay. So, and, yeah. This one has to true. Okay. All right, so these are the parameters, but they are not separated by a new line. Let's separate them by a new line. Okay, so these are the parameters, and as you can see, they are empty because we don't really, you know, parse them anyhow. Okay, so here we're gonna take the line split from left. So split from left. Found name. Name. Found name. Name rest. Okay. So we got that. If not found the name. Not found the name, we return just return nothing false. Okay, then we do split from, well, I mean, we split by character this thing, right? So then we take the rest and we split by what is that? Equals, right? And here we get found type, type value, right? So this is the type and value. To be fair, for now, I would actually go for something like type string, string and value string, just to see if everything works correctly, right? Then, if not found type, return false. And then, once we found everything, we have name, type, and value. We can use them for the parameter, but unfortunately, these are runtime things, so I won't be able to do something like that, right? It's not going to compile because they have to be constant, which makes sense. We can do something like, I don't know, make param, right? So this one's going to be name, string, type, string, value, string, right? And it's going to return a param. So param, like this, param, name, type, value, return param. Can I do that? Make param. Is that a good idea? Maybe it's not a good idea. But hey, do I care? I'm not sure if I do. Okay. So as you can see, we managed to parse those, but we still have a bunch of spaces and whatnot. So, and also we have a semicolon in here, which is, you know, not acceptable. So let me go to the params, and I'm gonna just remove the semicolons because we parse everything by lines, right? So now I wonder if there is any way to trim the spaces, right? Do we have any ways to trim the white spaces? Trim. Okay, so there's a trim left, trim right, and there's just trim. Okay, so that means in here I can do trim, 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 triple trim. There we go. So we triple trimmed all of them. So triple trim. Cool. The next thing is basically do a little bit of a dispatching, right? So right now we support only 2 types. So this is KGB already coming because of my Google query. KGB nukes, yeah. Does string allocate the new string? Probably not. I wouldn't allocate such string. Alright. If strings are just views, if I understand correctly, in Java strings are basically views on some section of memory. There's no need to allocate any memory to just do trim. You can just like narrow the view. Alright, so next thing, is it possible to do something like if type equal, can you do switch cases on the strings? Can you do switch cases on the string? That's a good question. So integer, so this has to be case integer. Alright, and in case of integer, what we have to do, so this has to be some sort of like a result. Result, param, nothing. Maybe we can even do something like param, param, yeah. So result, just a second, value, right, result value, it has to be something like set. Ooh, and set is such a weird name, so because it's so short, you can confuse it easily with anything. So let's actually do tu like this, and that means that every time I want to do set, I can do it like this. So tu is like this, but it also means that I have to do tu tagged union. Right, so we have to set it. Tagged union set, it has to be a pointer, right? I suppose this is the pointer, and the value we have to set in there is essentially, yeah, we have to parse an integer. The question is, how can we parse an integer? Let me see. So maybe there is something in basic, right? In basics, integer, float. Float to string, string to float, integer. Okay, so at least we have something for strings, right? String to float, which can fail, by the way, which is nice. Okay, so I'll keep that in mind. Remainder. Oh, okay. So remainder is like a remainder on the string. All right, that is totally fine. Let's actually start with the float, I think. Because I found this little thing in here. So we have to provide the value, right? So we provide the value, and we'll get the result, right? So the result, whether it succeeded, and also remainder, but I don't really care about the remainder, so maybe I'm gonna actually leave it as it is. Right, so we've got that. If we didn't succeed, we can just return false. Right, so we didn't succeed, fuck that, we just like, you know, continue. Otherwise we have a result. We set the result to this thing, and there we go, we've got this kind of stuff. Cool. Now, what about the integer? So I would assume that maybe the John's reflexes forced him to call such function a to I. I would assume, this is my like wild assumption. So let's actually search for A to I. Maybe even with case insensitive search, because maybe he, you know, capitalized that. No, it's not a thing. All right, maybe there's something like string to int. Okay, I guessed it correctly. All right. So, and it's like any integer. Is there something? Okay, so there is a thing called simple string. Very interesting, simple string. So there is a lot of toString functions. Do we have like a from string? No. Okay. String to. Oh, okay. All right, there are simpler version. Okay, so there is a simpler version. 2017. We want to have string to float to be parameterized, but it doesn't quite work consistently for some reason in both x64 test code. Okay, there is a string to int. Oh, there's literally like straight up this thing. Okay, which means that I should be able to do that. So first, so let's actually copy paste that. String to int. I don't know. So I use float32 and s64. Maybe I should use the same types as the ones that I'm using in here, just in case, so they fit sort of in there. Okay. Will that compile? And here we can do another case, which automatically returns false, right? So this is an unknown type. Right. This is an unknown type. There we go. This is not what I wanted. Let's try to compile this thing. Okay. So, and we don't need this stuff anymore because we are directly like setting things up. Or do we? That's a good question. Right, so we have a result, and after we parsed the name, we can do result name. So that means we have to put it like that. Name, result name, type, then we do the type, then we assign the value, and then we return the result. Right, we return the result. Okay, so is it gonna work? Attempt to dereference type float, but this is not a namespaced type. Attempt to dereference. This is extremely confusing. So string to float. So this one is a float, boolean, and then the string. Okay, float, boolean, blah, blah, blah. Oh, because I see. Yikes. Okay, so let's actually call this thing a value, but we'll already use a... Oh my god. Okay. Let's call it x. Right. Okay, could not parse a program, and we could not parse it here. It returns true, and the question is why. So it happened on... So we don't really know why exactly it failed, right? We don't know why exactly it failed on which of these parameters, right? So did it fail because of some syntactical error, or did it fail because we didn't have the... didn't parse one of these things? So it would be nice to actually maybe, you know, debug all of that, right? So let's put it this way. So it's going to print failed name, right? So failed name in here. We can put it like that. Failed type. So this is a failed type. So this is a failed float parse, And of course I forgot to put like a new line in here. I wonder if there's like a print ln, maybe not. Print failed int parse. Failed int parse. Print unknown type. And do we have anything else? Okay. So unknown type. Okay, so it encountered unknown type, and we can even take a look at the type itself. Right, so what's up with unknown type? And this is because I'm pretty sure it does not support switch cases on strings. Or because it was not trimmed appropriately. That's why. I only trimmed them on constructing the parameter, which makes sense. All right. So what essentially I have to do in here is, I guess, name trim name, right? Then type trim type, and then what is that? Value trim value. So I have to trim them. Okay, and that worked out. So as you can see, we parsed those parameters, and I really like that you can even see the tag, the type tag. As long as you, because some of the stuff needs to be also working at runtime. Because run works only at compile time, but it doesn't work at runtime. You see? So we need to code. We need the universal code, the code that works in both compile time and runtime. Using run is not really runtime friendly. It's compile time friendly, but not runtime friendly. Okay. So. Cool. It would be nice to actually write that a little bit more elegantly, if you know what I mean. Right, because I want to do split from left and simultaneously trim it, but I can't trim it unless I destructurized it and check that it doesn't, you know, it doesn't fail, right? So that's the first thing I have to do, which is not particularly, like, you know, convenient, but it is what it is. I mean, it's fine. Also, it would be nice to actually tell the user of this function, the caller of this function, what exactly failed. Maybe instead of boolean, we have to return enumeration that tells like what exactly has happened. But maybe I'm going to do that a little bit later. It's not a priority right now. It is not a priority. Okay. So let me see. All of that seems to be working. The next thing is essentially generate something based on this entire stuff, right? So right now, what we can do, we can just add, maybe we can do params jai. Yeah, we can do params jai. For how long am I already streaming? I'm streaming for almost 2 hours. God damn it! Like, fuck. All right. So I'm gonna try to do a very dumb thing, right? So we parse the parameter, right? We parse the parameter, and we can now try to do the following thing: add build string, right? So let's do add build string, and I'm gonna do tprint, and here we're gonna have a name, and then maybe the type, and then maybe the value, right? So this is what we're gonna have. Then for the name, I'm gonna do param name. For the type, I'm gonna do param value, and I wonder if I can extract the type. Let me take a look at the tagged union. So there is a type, and if I try to print the type, it should print it as the name of that specific type. And then I can do set, but do I have a get? How do I get? I have a strange feeling that to get something, I have to just get the data and cast that data to that specific value. Is that the case? I think that's the case, because at least this is what they do in here. Yeah. Alright, that's very interesting. So you take bytes data, you cast it to the pointer of that specific type, and then you essentially dereference it. Okay, so we can do the same thing, I suppose. I'm actually quite surprised why there is no such thing as get. Right, why there is no get. Yeah, because it's actually relatively easy to write one, right, using u tagged union value, then you take the type, I suppose that's how you do that, and yeah, I mean, so I'm not gonna keep that in this file because it will be changed probably in the next like the next release or something like that. I'm gonna keep it in here. Right, so there's no like reason for this thing to be like non-existing. Oh, because you still have to provide the type, right? You still have to provide the type, so that's kind of the problem. That's kind of the problem. Which, I mean, is not that big of a problem. I think I'm tired. Chat. I think I'm tired, straight up. Because what I have to have in here is the type. Right, so this is the type. And this thing should return type. But it may return a pointer. So, yeah, it doesn't make sense, because it's easier to just do that, right? Bytes. Why is it called the bytes? Because we, yeah. And bytes are from the, okay. So I think I'm starting to understand why this is not like a thing. Right. Anyway, so param value bytes data cast to the pointer of the type. And I wonder if I can do something. Well, yeah. Okay. I'm falling asleep. I cannot stream for more than 2 hours. All right. So I guess you get the idea of how, like, you do metaprogramming. I think this is how I would do that, but I would like to continue and at some point actually implement. Does anyone have any questions? Before I go? Because I like my brain is slowly frying. Any questions? The tagged union idea is actually so cool. I really like that. Do you know if JS strings are Unicode or ASCII? As far as I know, they're just an array of bytes, and whatever you want can be there. Do you like JS so far? Yes, I actually kind of like it. Is this just for learning, or is there a greater aim? Why people look for like a greater grand scheme idea? I don't understand. No. Can we just have fun already? I don't know. Can you explain the pointer thing? It's a dereference. That's it. There's nothing to explain. It's literally pointer dereference. Okay. So maybe I just need a small break, because I think I'm starting to understand. So the only thing I need to have in here is just param type. And I wonder if I can just do something like case. where I could do this stuff. Is that a thing I can do? Yeah, case and float, and then case. So let me see. Okay, type is not a member of param because it's a value type. Okay. It's probably tag. You can do that. I really like the attitude of this language. You can't just do that, right? So you need to dispatch by type. Well, go ahead and dispatch by type. Like this is the most obvious way to dispatch by type. Holy shit. I'm telling you, this language is offensively based, right? It's just like that's the best way I can describe this language, offensively based. Like you need to dispatch by type. Yeah, this is just like, what's the most obvious way to dispatch by type? Well, take the type and just do case integer and case float. And that is like this thing. Type is supposed to be compile time thing, right? It's supposed to be compile time thing, but yet I'm using it in a runtime context, right? So there's nothing interesting about this kind of stuff if you're talking about dynamic language, right? Because in dynamic language, everything is available, everything in runtime. But we're talking about compile time static language, right? And type is simultaneously a compile time and a runtime thing, and it's just like this juxtaposition of runtime and compile time things. It's just like, okay. So, okay, so if it's in an integer, right, so I want to just print this kind of thing. So the only reason why I need the tag is... Okay, so if it's so offensively based, right, if it's so offensively based, can I do shit like that then? So if I have a type, right, and type, if we consider type a runtime value, what prevents us in the compiler to write a code? If you're trying to do reference a runtime type, it turns it into a pointer type. So then you can also have a compile time cast. Like, I mean, technically, if you want to be so offensively based, right? If you want to be so offensively based, you should be able to do that, right? And there are ways to do that. I can see some ways to do that, like internally. So then, param. So value, date, bytes. Is it called bytes, right? So it's bytes data, and then I should be able to maybe print it like that, but it might not work. So let's put it this way. So then I can type prime. It may not work, but maybe there is a way to work that, or for that to work. We'll see. So name, value, bytes. When trying to evaluate the constant type, non-constant declaration. Okay, so you can't do that. All right, that makes sense. That makes sense. So that means I'm not gonna even try to go that route. Right. So let's just do if param value tag. Let's do the original idea that I wanted to do. Case integer, right? So the only reason why I need to do that is because now I want to be able to just do that, and because of that I'll have to actually reference this thing. But yeah, let's see. Yeah. Oh, that was funny. Okay. So, and if we encounter anything else, this is unreachable in my opinion. Okay. Oh, I mean, it has to be like this. Okay. Okay. So, what I forgot is a new line. Right. Alright, so... What the hell is that? Yeah, it didn't work the way I expected. It didn't work the way it expected. So I took this pointer, though I'm not quite sure. So this gives me the pointer to the bytes. Dereference them. What is... Oh, dereference. Okay. God damn it. Okay, so that makes sense now. Alright, cool. So here I print those parameters, right? Here I print those parameters, but what if I add build string them? Aha, type mismatch. And of course, I'll have to do like the usual thing. Let me see. Tprint. And like so. And then I'm gonna add it to the workspace. Okay, that's very cool. So what is complaining? So jailbreak has already started running, so its options be using set option. Okay, so I probably do some weird stuff. What are you talking about? So I suppose I need to start this entire stuff a little bit later, right? So we set options, then we add the build file, and before we add the build file, we do all of these meta-programming shenanigans. Okay, so maybe that's the problem. Okay, so redeclaration of variable, and the redeclaration has happened in the generated config, I suppose, right? So it's a build, w3, so it happened in here. Oh, edit string are actually added in the same file. I thought they're gonna be added in a separate... Okay, so that means I don't have to worry about that. All right, look at that. So this is the code that we generated from the params.config. So that's actually pretty cool. Yeah, that is actually very cool. But unfortunately, this one is interpreted as probably not float, but anyway. And this is needed only for like baking the configuration, right? So we can quite easily now introduce maybe some sort of a parameter, right? So the parameter is going to be basically debug, which is by default is true. So, and we only do all of that. If we are in debug, right? So this is the debug, and that means we just generate the, well, not debug. Okay. Otherwise, if this is a debug, instead of like baking those values, we may want to generate a module that allows you to reload these runtime parameters. And since these kind of things could be also runtime, maybe we should turn them into function calls. Yeah, I think we should turn every constant in here into function call, and depending on whether this thing is true or false, it's going to be either compile time parameter or runtime parameter. And if it's a runtime parameter, it's going to be like parsed from params.config at runtime, right? So that's the entire idea, right? You have a single config, and depending on the mode, you either have this thing code generated and baked, or read at runtime, right? So you can modify it at runtime. So that's the goal, at least. That's the goal, at least. But unfortunately, I'm already streaming for 2 hours, and I'm not sure if I have enough strength to continue. But maybe I'm gonna continue like in a second stream, and then I can continue 2 streams together as I did last time. I think it's a pretty cool idea. Yeah. I kind of like this idea of like, you know, doing like a little bit of a streaming, then taking a break, doing another stream, and then concatenating the streams that are related by a topic, and then uploading to YouTube as a single stream. I think it's a pretty cool idea, right? Because sometimes like I cannot like do without like long breaks, like a single topic. We'll see. But yeah, okay. Doesn't even have any questions, right? So this is so far what I learned about metaprogramming in Jai. I'm only starting to learn Jai, so I don't know much. Please forgive me if I make mistakes, right? And what I like about this language is that how easy it is to learn, right? So you can just like poke around, read the comments and see some things, and you get the idea of how like language works. I think it's actually very cool. How long to next stream? I have no idea. It depends. It all depends. Does anyone have any questions? Questions before I go? Been a student for 4 years now, and this is the first time I'm actually enjoying watching someone code. Thank you. I really appreciate that. I also enjoy coding, actually. One mistake and your computer is deleted. I mean, just like with any programming language. I mean, what's the difference between delete your computer in a meta program and in a main program? What's the difference? So, if you can delete your computer at compile time, you can delete your computer at runtime as well. And in that sense, how is that different from any other language, right? So it's just, how is that different from just programming then? So all right, so I guess that's it for today. So maybe we should rate somebody. Is anyone streaming any epic Jai development? So let's actually try to see. So since the beta is actually expanding, I would expect there's more people who stream Jaya right now. Can you guys suggest anyone who's streaming Jaya? Because people verify every single line of JS modules that no downloads, of course. Of course. That's what people do. Okay. So. Man, I wish Twitch was not ass. But unfortunately, it is a huge ass. Alright, who's streaming Jaya? Do we have any epic Jai streamers? Pro C++. Okay. Didn't see anyone streaming Jai. Alright. Very well then. Okay. See you all next time. Love you.